everyone. We are here for a Week 13 slate breakdown. Hopefully, we'll improve. I will on last week's, Brandon Cooks, Amari Cooper montage. That's kind of what all my lineups did, and they just crashed. But we have more weeks to go. I think there's some good games and good matchups that should be, make things a little more straightforward for DFS this week. Is that your general vibe?
Well, the thing about straightforward for DFS, when I play these guaranteed prize pool tournaments, straightforward is not necessarily what I'm looking for. I'm looking to be different than everybody, and I sometimes struggle to do so.
Yeah, absolutely. So I guess getting into the first game here, we are going to look at the Chiefs and Falcons. I'm pretty excited about this game, actually. I think this is kind of going to be an interesting matchup. What's your take on this game?
Yeah, I think it is an interesting game because if you look at what the Chiefs put up last week against a good Broncos defense, and then you look at the Chiefs going against a bad Falcons defense, you got to like it on both sides. They're getting a lot of mileage out of rookie Tyreek Hill. So if Jeremy Maclin with the groin injury remains out, you have to assume they're going to put a lot of volume on Hill and Travis Kelce. So those are two solid plays. And then when you look at the running back, Spencer Ware against the Falcons defense that's been one of the worst against fantasy running backs, I think you could like a lot of Chiefs. Just don't bother with Alex Smith, obviously. We tried to make that leap of faith for Alex Smith earlier this year. It doesn't get any better than 280-2, and that just doesn't really move the fantasy needle. So as much as you might play Hill and Kelce and Ware even as a pass receiving back, avoid Alex Smith. And then, of course, the Falcons, one of the best things about their offense is it generally is a high volume to the same people type offense. Last week, it threw a little monkey wrench into our system with Gabriel, who is kind of hot in recent weeks, but it goes back to Julio Jones. Every time he has a bad game, he comes back with a monster performance, and this should be one against the Chiefs defense that's been fifth worst against fantasy QBs and second worst against wide receivers.
Yeah, the Chiefs are that type of defense where they do have some really good players, but they also have some really weak spots in their defense. And I agree, whenever Julio has a down game, it always seems like he comes back in good fashion. And this is the type of matchup where I think he can do that. Taylor Gabriel, obviously, working those screens pretty well, but, those types of plays are pretty inconsistent in terms of, it's basically been happening for him. And yeah, I did like Alex Smith early in the year. He's been even more Alex Smithy than the normal Alex Smith type year, where he's not even really getting the rushing yards right now. You just stay away from him. As you mentioned, with Maclin potentially out, I'm kind of hoping he is. I love Travis Kelce. I think he's a nice cash option on both sites if Macklin's out. So we're basically getting, two of my favorite games of the slate off the board pretty early. Yeah. Lions and Saints. Drew Brees, putting up a borderline MVP season, with all of his statistics, loves his rookie, Michael Thomas, second rounder there. Brandon Cooks, obviously a nice talent. He's just got so many weapons right now. Going to be tough for the Lions defense. Are you buying into maybe the Lions skill position players a little bit as well? Or is this just the Saints at home?
The Saints at home, you load up on them. But when the game gets loose, the Lions don't just disappear. So I'm going to play some – I spelled it Roddick. I just noticed in the slate breakdown. Theo Riddick, put some in there against the third worst team in fantasy against running backs, so he'll hit double digits. Eric Ebron will hit double digits. And then I love the value of Bolden. He's the cheapest Lions target, and he's the heaviest volume of late. So he stands out as the best play of the receivers. And I do like the Lions side because I'm learning in DFS as we all just keep evolving. Everybody loads up on the favorite and forgets the underdog, yet the underdog is the one that gets the garbage time and does it at cheaper value, cheaper price, and in a game where garbage time numbers pile up a little bit easier. So I kind of like the Lions side too.
Yeah, you mentioned Theo Riddick or Andy Roddick, whichever. I wouldn't play Andy Roddick, but Theo Riddick, great correlation play with Drew Brees and any of his receiving targets there. I just look at if Brees is going to be scoring at will here, I think we have to project Riddick for a lot of dump down passes, either in comeback mode or with the Lions trying to keep up the pace. So I like that. If I am playing players in this game, I do probably want to use Brees over Stafford, but I won't count it out. I won't count out Stafford as a tournament guy,
Yeah, it's not a bad play at the price.
Yeah.
And it's an easy way to get exposure to a lot of points without getting the high ownership percentage.
Absolutely. And so I'll ask you one more question. Obviously, Marvin Jones has fallen off considerably. Golden Tate kind of asserted himself as the alpha again. And Eric Ebron has been all over the place this year. Out of those three, I guess, if you're going to zone in on one, who's your guy there?
I'll probably go with the tight end, Ebron. He's been the most consistent. But again, I think the Bolden play is the best of the bunch.
Yeah. Gotcha. In terms of, are you dealing with the Josh Hill, Kobe Fleener saga that's going on with the Saints right now?
I'm going to try to avoid it. Now, the one thing about it, though, is the Lions are the worst team in fantasy against tight ends. So, you got to consider all of the Saints' points. It's just the thing the Saints do, like last week, they scored 49 points, and Brandon Cooks got no targets. So you never know. You think you got it licked. Oh, they're getting 49 points. Brandon Cooks, always great at home. He's going to go off, and he gets no targets. The one consistent thing is Brees, obviously. So go there. And you like the matchup. So you could take pieces of this game in many different ways. It's just you can't be sure of where the Saints are going to go on offense.
Yeah, especially if you're playing a cash game and you want to be more conservative. I think you kind of have to slot Brees in there just from a safety point. You kind of get exposure to all those pieces, whoever it may be. And then, maybe make your move with Michael Thomas or Cooks. You like Cooks this week, right?
Yeah, coming off his no target outing, speaking out against his usage, you got to assume, some volume there. And at home, he tends to love playing on the turf. The Lions, I know they have some decent corners, but they've given up some touchdowns in the passing game. So there should be some fireworks in this one all around.
Yeah, we've spent a little more time on this game, but I think that's for very good reason. You should as well. Certainly, a lot of these players should be in your mind, at least for roster construction. Now, moving to a much different vibe here. The Rams and Patriots. I don't know if you heard. I'm from Western Mass, so I've been listening to the Boston media all week, just destroy Jeff Fisher for that conference call where he said Danny Woodhead and Brandon Bolden were the running backs. I don't know if he believes that or not, but the point being, Bill Belichick versus Jeff Fisher for the Rams.
Yeah.
What are your takes on?
Well, I think with Rob Gronkowski now out for the year, you have to put some volume on Martellus Bennett, who returned to practice. So he's almost like a must play in that offense. You got some confusion now with who's Brady going to go to. You got Malcolm Mitchell impacting the red zone and end zone targets. You got Julian Edelman's going to be obviously high volume. But now you have this guy, Dion Lewis, who was a starter before his injury, coming back to play last week, played a couple of weeks ago, but getting more snaps last week. 23 snaps. He had 6 rushes and 7 targets. That's 13 touches and 23 snaps. So if he gets more playing time, he's going to get huge fantasy numbers, and his price is very low. So if you're not going with Brady and just doing the catch-all play, maybe Brady and Bennett as a stack, or maybe Brady, Bennett, Edelman as a stack, throw in Dion Lewis as a sleeper in lineups, because there'll be a lot of passes and runs. He's kind of their most important player in third downs when everybody's looking downfield. Lewis slips out of the backfield. And Brady has been famous for using his running backs out of the backfield in the past game.
You know, at the beginning of the week, I was like, I'm going to wait this situation out on Dion Lewis. I'm going to wait till I see him pass James White. Then Gronk goes out. Then I look at Cafe Value. Cafe Value loves Dion Lewis. I talked to Renee Miller earlier today. She loves Dion Lewis. You like Dion Lewis. I'm like, you know what? Maybe I like Dion Lewis.
So, we all like Dion Lewis. So you know what that means? LeGarrette Blount, 3 touchdowns.
I mean, you know, it's certainly a LeGarrette Blount game certainly is viable. But I do think like what you just mentioned, you know, those 13 touches on 23 snaps is really important, because, you know, you kind of see sometimes wide receivers get some targets on low snaps, but you don't normally see like running backs with low snaps get that many touches. So I think he's very interesting. If he gets 13 touches again, there's a very good chance he hits value, especially on DraftKings, you know, 3,800. That's a superb value. With Gronk out now, I mean, I like Edelman, sort of banged up this year, but overall, he's really the last consistent option. A lot of people are liking Malcolm Mitchell. Are you in on that, or is
not so much this week? He's more of a red zone, end zone guy, but I think this game is not necessarily a pass it into the end zone. It might be a run it into the end zone, flip it to the back type game. So I'm not in love with Mitchell coming off of his big performance last week.
Yeah, I'm with you on that. As far as the Rams go, you have any love for my Rams, or is it just going to be a slaughter?
None. See, here's the problem. Todd Gurley had the opportunity to finally make hay against the Saints in New Orleans in a game where it's wildly blown out. Yeah, it's a running back. It's a blowout, so they kind of reduce the rushing attempts. But use the star guy in the passing game, you fools. But Lance Kendricks has been used in the passing game, and if you think truly like the Vegas line suggests, a 13-point favorite, Patriots are going to blow this out, you have to assume Tavon Austin, Lance Kendricks, and I guess Todd Gurley, but I'm not playing them. The first 2 guys I will potentially. So, you know, there is some garbage time numbers to be had for the Rams.
Yeah, I think you focus in on Lance Kendricks there. He's the garbage time guy. If you are looking at a cheap option where he could, you know, like you were talking about, get those fourth quarter, the Rams are driving against the Patriots prevent. Lance Kendrick's going to be the dump off guy to build up some volume by the end there. So yeah, I think that's where I'm looking. I can't do Gurley at this stage. You know, the stats are representing what you're seeing on the field too. I mean, he hasn't, as a Todd Gurley like fanboy, you know, he's missing lanes right now. He's not playing great either. I don't know what's going on, but I don't want to think about it anymore. So we're moving on.
It's depressing. So if you don't do Gurley, you do men?
Huh?
Bad tasteless joke. Let's go on to the next game.
All right. Broncos and Jags. You know, Blake Bortles has already thrown 2 interceptions off people's shoes this year. Does he make it a third this week?
I am going to punt on this football game. I think both teams are going to do a lot of punting as well. If you're playing anything, I like the Broncos defense coming off a loss. The only problem is they'll be widely played against the Jags. They've kept the sack totals in check, but they haven't really kept the turnovers down. So the Broncos are going to get after Bortles, create some turnovers. And then on offense, I think the Broncos are, they're talented as wide receiver positions, but Trevor Siemian, I just can't trust him to do anything more than 250 and 2. And so I can't play Demaryius Thomas or Emmanuel Sanders. Quietly, the Jags are a top 10 team against fantasy wideouts. So I'm going to fade the receivers. Maybe put Booker in there for volume. Maybe this is one game that he goes for 102. But in general, this game to me is a look away. It is a train wreck for DFS purposes.
Yeah, you kind of get excited about some of the players in this game. You look at Allen Robinson, Demaryius Thomas, Emmanuel Sanders, but then you really start to look at it and you're like, God, I don't really want to play any of these guys. I certainly don't want to play, Julius Thomas at this point, who they run these stupid routes where he runs straight to the sideline and gets tackled for 1 yard. I don't understand why you would use Julius Thomas that way. But yeah, I don't know. Tough game for fantasy, I think, like you mentioned. I think Marquise Lee might have an easier matchup than the Allen Robinson and Allen Hurns just because they take all the coverage away. But I just don't want to play anyone in this matchup. I know
it's gonna be a low-scoring game.
Yeah, I know TJ Yeldon is cheap and the Broncos run D is bad, but he doesn't seem like the type of guy that'll be able to take advantage of something like that. So probably just mostly a fade. Texans and Packers, I actually am interested in your take on this one. Aaron Rodgers thriving, obviously did well against the Eagles at home last week. That was Eagles have played really well on defense at home this year. So that was a pretty interesting sample size. So what is your take on the Packers versus another really solid secondary in the Texans?
Well, I don't think Rodgers is going to get taken off his 303. The one thing I might do is limit my exposure to Jordy Nelson, who's become more of a cash game play, doesn't really have that high of a ceiling. The higher ceiling guy has been more Devontae Adams. I think James Starks also a solid play for a nice low price for someone who's going to be a high volume back and a productive offense even in this matchup. The one thing I'm looking at is the Packers' awful secondary. Now, I know the Eagles didn't expose it, but I'm hoping against hope. This is the week, not for Brock Osweiler, but Nuke Hopkins. So DeAndre Hopkins going nuclear for 150 and 2 touchdowns, even with that scrub Osweiler in the game. And if you want to get really crazy with a wide open game for the Texans, Fedorowicz, Lamar Miller, sure. But I'm looking at Hopkins' value now. Having waited so many weeks for this big opportunity, I think this is the one to take advantage.
Yeah, and people are off him completely now. So you're going to be at low ownership with an extremely talented player. I know this year hasn't gone how any of us wanted for him, but it's the Packers secondary. They're playing safeties at corner right now. They are a complete mess. If there was a week, I think, Hopkins in tournaments is an interesting move. I'm assuming you think CJ Fedorowicz the more, safe option in that passing game, probably.
Yeah, the only thing is that the ceiling's low with Osweiler.
Yes.
And so there's other tight ends like, Martellus Bennett, that can go off for 2 touchdowns, whereas Fedorowicz is 5 for 50 and 1. It's just not going to move the needle for me.
That is the CJ Fedorowicz 2016 line right there. 5 for 50, maybe touchdown, maybe not. That's kind of what you're looking at from him. In terms of you mentioned Nelson and Adams. Are we done with Cobb? I'm having a tough time with this, but I think we might have to start thinking maybe, Adams is the number 2 now.
Yeah, and I even think Adams, after that last performance, it might even be the best play of them all
Mm,
because his price gives you value versus Nelson, and Nelson hasn't really had that huge performance this year. And Nelson or Devontae Adams has had a multiple
yes.
big efforts. So I'm more on the Adams value side than the safe play in Nelson or the wasted play in Cobb.
Yeah. I do think that's a pretty fun game. Maybe we don't get a ton of exposure in one lineup, but I do think there's some nice pieces there that you can throw one player in or something like that. Eagles and Bengals. Eagles on the road haven't quite been the same. Bengals, without AJ Green and Gio Bernard. Where are you landing on, I guess, these offenses?
Well, it's funny that we opened this Week 13 slate breakdown video with wide open games, and this
Mm-hmm.
is another one of those yuck games that, like the Broncos Jags, I'm just like, ugh, I don't want any piece of this. This is awful. With no AJ Green, you got to assume it's going to be volume on Jeremy Hill and Tyler Eifert. But do you trust Andy Dalton in that offense against a decent Eagles defense? I don't bother. I mean, I guess you can like them on volume because they're just going to get the ball a lot more because there's snaps to be had without Green and Giovanni Bernard in there. But I'm not in love with this game. I do like, though, the emerging Dorrell Green Beckham. He did have good numbers last week. His value or his price is still very low. He can hit double digits in targets, and then that probably will mean double digits in DFS points. So if you're looking for a bargain receiver in this mess of a quagmire of a game, I think DGB is the guy.
Yeah, and he's min price on DK. I've kind of been staring him down this week. Like, do I really want to play you? Maybe. I do think a good indicator for him is Nelson Aguilar being a healthy scratch last week. That is sort of something to watch for Dorial Green Beckham because I mean, if they're taking him out of the equation. Obviously, he was running a lot of routes and not getting a lot done. If those are out, DGB could really be an interesting guy in the second half. Jordan Matthews missing practice.
Another
Is
reason
Zach
to like
Ertz?
another reason to like
Yeah,
DGB.
yeah, absolutely. Is Zach Ertz someone you're looking at this week?
Not really. I just don't think this game's going to get loose enough. We saw the Bengals and Ravens play both under 20. This is lining up like that game for me. So I'm not going to get excited about this game. I guess I'll go Hill and Eifert if I'm going anybody on the Bengals, and if I'm going with the Eagles, maybe Ertz, but it's more likely DGB.
Yeah, and the Jeremy Hill excitement I had when I thought he was going to get these feature touches are just totally getting beat down by the
Well,
defenses he's facing right now.
right. Yeah, and I was worried you were going to
Yeah.
say, "Oh, it's bad news." He's actually become more of a pass receiver.
Yep.
It's just he faced the Ravens. They had the number one run defense in football
Mhm.
last week. So, and this is a decent run defense. And I just think if there's a better, more explosive matchup for the Bengals, it might be a better week for Hill.
Agreed. Yeah, we're still waiting for that. I think he's got a few good matchups coming up, but again, this is kind of a week where he's all right, good price, but tough matchup.
Yeah.
And we're going down the line here. As I mentioned, I really loved those first two games. I really did. Uh,
And then the games of
Dolphins,
yuck.
Ravens, just gross. Steve Smith Sr. Jay Ajayi against the number one rush defense. Devontae Parker missing practice.
Yeah.
What do you got for me?
It's a series of fortunate circumstances. We finally get some movement with the Dolphins offensively, and
Mm,
then we have to have them go up against the number two defense in football and the Ravens, the number two run defense. And the Dolphins can run the ball, but they're not going to run the ball on the Ravens. So the only way you play a Jai is if you're looking contrarian and thinking he's going to get a pair of short touchdowns and 50 to 60 yards. Downfield, I don't love Tannehill in a slower pace game. I like it in games where, points might be flying, and so they could be chucking to Devontae Parker and Jarvis Landry. But both those guys, to me, have low ceilings. I think the Ravens side is unfortunate because you finally get a run defense that's, flexible in terms of how they can run against them. The Dolphins are third worst against the run. But Terrence West and Kenneth Dixon are in this 50-50 timeshare. And then what they really need to do to score for your fantasy team is get 60 yards and a touchdown. Well, either one of them might get 60 yards. Heck, both of them might get 60 yards. But you need that touchdown, and the Dolphins have only given up a handful of those to running backs thus far this season in fantasy. So a lot of unfortunate, man, we like this guy, but not in this matchup type situation. And another game where a bunch of field goals. So, hey, I guess if I like something, it's Justin Tucker.
I was going to say that. Yes. I mean, really, the only guy in a great matchup here is Justin Tucker.
Smells like Updog in here.
He
No, really, you smell like Updog.
Updog?
You're supposed to say, "What's up, dog?"
Oh, wow. Yeah.
You didn't hear that Justin Tucker joke last week?
Nope.
Justin Tucker landed it, though. He goes, "Oh, man, it smells like Updog in here." And someone played the joke, and the journalist asked him, "What's up, dog?" "Nothing. What's up with you?"
Wow. That's impressive by that journalist. Good for him. I am not at that stage of self-actualization yet. Again, 49ers Bears, like that just makes me want to throw up, like a little, not like a full throw up, but just like a little gag, and like something comes.
Swallow it. It's gross.
Yeah. What are we looking at here, if anything? Obviously, Colin Kaepernick's been a story of
Everybody's
late.
going to love him, and I don't love him against the Bears, believe it or not. I think the Bears team at home will play a lot more, especially against an exposable opponent, will play a lot more like John Fox wants to play, which is ball in their hands, ball control, low scoring, play some defense. I don't think they're a great defense, but the 49ers don't do much of anything. So they don't stop the run. I think Jordan Howard's capable of getting 102. They don't stop the pass. So if you love Marcus Wilson making his 2016 appearance last week with Matt Barkley, I think you can like Wilson and Howard in the matchup. The 49ers are dead last in fantasy against both of those positions. I even think it could be a comeback week for Cameron Meredith. I'm not loving Kaepernick because everybody's going to start loving him, and I do think the Bears are going to slow this game down. Kaepernick's, to me, like Tannehill, a lot cooler when points are flying around, and so he looks capable in fantasy. This is not one of those games.
Yeah, and I think if you like Jordan Howard, you have to be a little worried about Kaepernick and the game flow, like you were kind of talking about. If Jordan Howard does well this week and you think they're going to be able to control the clock, you probably don't like Kaepernick quite as much as, the general consensus is going to. I like Howard, so that's the direction I'm going. If you do like Kaepernick, I mean, Vance McDonald's an interesting punt at tight end. I don't really like any of the receivers, obviously. I don't necessarily like Carlos Hyde. I think the Bears have actually been pretty good against the run this year. So it's really just Kaepernick on the 49ers if you don't think the Bears are going to control the clock. Yeah, like you said, Marcus Wilson, sure. He's cheap, but overall, just a bunch of backups in this game.
I will say, though, Vance McDonald has been fairly consistent with Kaepernick. So if you're looking for a cheap tight end, somebody that could get that 550 and one, but do it at a cheaper price than a CJ Fedorowicz, Vance McDonald's as good as any pick in that category.
Absolutely. Getting into a different range of game here, the Bills and Raiders. I like this one quite a bit. Sammy Watkins back to practice after missing one early in the week. Could be an interesting low ownership play. I think he was heading towards being highly owned, And I think that one practice missed might freak a lot of people out. Raiders obviously thriving this year. What's your read on this game?
I think this is going to be an entertaining game. I don't think it's going to be a lot of DFS fireworks because I do believe that the Bills and the Raiders can both play defense and they can do it against each other. And the Bills, if you're playing anybody, it's the cash game cow that is LaShawn McCoy. Not in love with the downfield game. I know Justin Hunter catches a touchdown here and there, and Sammy Watkins can do some damage, but the ceilings are both very low. If you're looking for a contrarian defense, the Derek Carr is the least sacked quarterback in the NFL, but the Bills can get after the quarterback and force some rare turnovers. So not a lot of people will be on the Bills defense, which is pretty cheap this week, and you might actually luck into a touchdown. So I like that aspect of the game. The Raiders side, I'm thinking Carr is going to be held back to more of a 250-2 type. The Bills have played much better against the pass of late, so that makes me a little wary of Cooper, Crabtree, Wolford. I'll probably consider Latavius Murray for 60 yards and a touchdown, but he is banged up with his ankle injury. He's been playing through it, and if you want to, gamble, I doubt that Murray's going to be held out of the game to start, but maybe Murray gets banged up against the Bills front. Jalen Richard comes on and gets the 60 yards and a touchdown at a cheap price. So Jalen Richard, out of nowhere, probably be less than a 1% owned in a GPP type play that'll go off for 60 yards and a touchdown perhaps. But to me, this game is going to be more disappointing in DFS terms than it is in entertainment value.
I like this take. It's a unique one. A lot of people are on this game. I am interested in Cooper at potentially low ownership after last week. But I think – so you're taking the under in this game basically, right?
Yeah, well under.
Pretty high.
Yeah.
So I think that's interesting. I do like McCoy this week. But yeah, I think that's an interesting scenario to play out there. Derek Carr, man, he just seems to consistently figure it out. Yeah. So I did like Tyrod a little more before Watkins didn't practice. I'm okay with him now, but again, I'm a little more lukewarm on this Bills offense than I wanted to be at the beginning of the week. Still McCoy and cash though. Giants and Steelers. Steelers at home. We know all those narratives and all that stuff. Ben Roethlisberger. Fire flames at home.
Yeah, let's just fire these numbers off. So his past home games: 408 and 3 touchdowns against Dallas, 380 and 4 touchdowns against the Jets, 305 touchdowns against Kansas City, and then the low watermark: 259 yards and 3 touchdowns against Cincy. Now, I know the Giants' defense is better than all those, but those are not bad defenses. And Big Ben has not moved anything on the roads, but he does it at home. So I think there's a lot of optimism in this one for an Eli Manning, Ben Roethlisberger shootout. And I'm thinking it's going to wind up being a 20-16 battle of field goals.
Yeah, absolutely. It should be interesting. So if you're in on this game, would you play a lineup that looks like Roethlisberger, Bell, Brown with Odell Beckham on the other side? Is that something you could see working out?
Absolutely. With the total as high as it is, the Steelers as a 6-point favorite, that all makes complete sense. And I think it makes so much sense that it wouldn't make a whole lot of sense to do it in GPP. Now, cash games, obviously, you're going to get consistent numbers out of those guys. But they are highly priced, and the Giants can play some defense. I'm not going to guarantee that they can slow Big Ben at home because no one can. But I think this game is going to disappoint some people.
Yeah, Giants are a pretty good team. And the good thing about the Giants offense is the running game is just in shambles. They did not prepare well with their roster construction before the season. So
I will tell you,
going to be
they did improve with the run last week. I know it was the Cleveland Browns who were horrible against the run, so therefore Rashad Jennings should have had a huge game. But they didn't need him. They didn't need him to do that against the Browns. This game, if they win this game, they go into Dallas next week with the chance to really put one into the division rival. So this
Yeah.
game is huge for the Giants. I think they go at it hard, and they do it with the running game and pound in Rashad Jennings against the bottom 5 team in fantasy against running backs and Steelers. So you might put some volume on Jennings. The problem is I just don't love this game for total points, where some other
Fair
people
enough.
do.
Fair enough. Redskins and Cardinals. I think this is an interesting game from a what's your what's your view of Kirk Cousins game? Because either you think Kirk Cousins is good, so
I do think he's good.
you're
I
gonna
do think
shy
he's good.
away.
But I also will say the Cardinals have the number 1 ranked defense.
Yeah.
And Kirk Cousins has played well against good defenses. But this one's on the road. The Cardinals are a mess, having lost that blowout in Atlanta. I think this is a good week for the Cardinals. I think this is a good week for an underpriced Cardinals defensive play against Cousins. I think this is a good week for an underpriced play of Palmer. Obviously, every week is good for David Johnson as high exposure, but he might be the highest played running back in all of fantasy this week. So if you're in GPPs, you might not move the needle with David Johnson at his price. But Palmer, Gresham emerging. If you assume Josh Norman's taken out Larry Fitzgerald, then you got to assume that Palmer's going to be going to David Johnson, Gresham, and then maybe J.J. Nelson, John Brown. You throw some John Brown, J.J. Nelson action in there. I think there's going to be a lot to be had. And while I've had some, of those previous games I've talked about as big numbers that I'm disappointed in where the game flow might take it, this is a game I think the game flow might take it a bit higher.
Okay. With Jordan Reed out, where do you think the distribution of targets is going to go?
I think it's going to be high still on Vernon Davis. Vernon Davis at his price is solid. I'm going to fade a lot of the deep threats. So Deshaun Jackson, Jamison Crowder, Pierre Garçon, those guys against that secondary. I know they've had some good defensive performances at home against a team like Seattle, which can't throw the ball downfield like Kirk Cousins can. But I am going in on the Cardinals this week, maybe to my detriment, but I'm getting some value out of it.
I like it. And that Carson Palmer, David Johnson stack has kind of been successful of late because Palmer loves him in the red zone, and they split him out like a receiver, and he's in every week. I believe he's got a receiving touchdown 3 straight weeks. I mean, that trend is going to continue. He's just a tremendous talent. So Carson Palmer will continue to benefit from that. And one of my favorite games of the week. I think I like a few others more than you do. But generally speaking, this is certainly a top 4 game on the slate. Buccaneers, Chargers, just 2 goofy teams that are going to do goofy things like the entire time. I mean, like no matter who's dominating the game for the first 3 quarters, it's just going to be the other team, in comeback mode the whole fourth quarter and maybe pulling it out somehow. And like there's going to be a weird special teams play and like fumbles and interceptions, and it's just going to be great,
I think what's going to be great is Mike Evans. After he torched the Seattle Seahawks at home, you have to assume he goes on the road here against the Chargers. Phillip Rivers, red hot, thrown for 3 TDs in back-to-back weeks, throwing up numbers, and Mike Evans going to have to play catch-up. Oh, that's going to look great for Evans. It's going to be complete DFS bonkers numbers for Evans. He's going to be my receiver in all lineups. I'm going to fade the rest of the Bucs offense, though. I don't love Doug Martin even when he's healthy, but he is facing the number 6th ranked run defense in the Chargers. So I'm going to fade that. Winston just doesn't have enough downfield threats for me to play him. The Chargers side, a lot of people are going to like Rivers for 3 touchdowns. I'm looking more toward the tight ends. So I'm going in with a Hunter Henry play. Maybe a Tyrell Evans. He's been surging of late. And since the Bucks haven't given up a rushing TD since October, I'm going to fade Melvin Gordon, which I haven't done much of that this season.
Yeah, that's a fair point. In terms of Phillip Rivers, it seems like he's starting to get things going from a passing point of view. So a lot of those touchdowns Gordon was getting early in the year are becoming passing touchdowns. So that is something to be aware of, and a little natural regression there. I mean, Gordon had 49 red zone rushing attempts in like 8 games or something, 9 games or something stupid. So that certainly was going to come down at some point. I do like Evans. I think you can stack Winston and him together. Tyrell Williams came back to practice this week after missing a few early in the week, so I do like that as well. Next game here. Oh, Panthers and Seahawks. What are we going to do with these two teams? They're
Yeah,
just.
two defensive teams in Seattle. So I think you fade just about everything for the Panthers. I know there's moments that have been had with Cam Newton, Jonathan Stewart, Calvin Benjamin, Greg Olsen. I think they're all bad plays on the road here against the Seahawks. I think the saving grace is maybe you get some contrarian value in GPPs, but I'm gonna throw that lineup away because Seahawks should control this game at home. So if you think the Seahawks are going to control the game, it's probably not going to be with the run because their offensive line is kind of dinged up and in shambles. Thomas Rawls not a great consistency guy. Maybe a contrarian play, but not a consistency guy. So I'll go Russell Wilson, Jimmy Graham stack if I'm doing anything. Jimmy Graham kind of becomes the premium tight end in DFS with Gronk out for the year. Olsen's facing the Legion of Boom. Kelsey's got Alex Smith, so he's never going to get multiple touchdowns. Eifert's got Andy Dalton. He's never going to get multiple touchdowns. So Jimmy Graham, Russell Wilson's stack might be it. Maybe a Seahawks defensive play. But in general, this game to me is a whole lot of disappointment. Even though the numbers are heavily favoring the Seahawks, I think this is a game that plays 20-10 and just disappoints everyone.
Yeah, I do like that Wilson Graham combo along with Doug Baldwin. I think all those three are interesting. Hopefully they bounce back, but you did see, against the Buccaneers, that line is still really bad. And just because Wilson's healthy doesn't mean he's not going to have bad games now because of that line. So something to keep in mind. As you mentioned, I don't think we can really touch the Panthers this week. I just don't see the upside there. And yeah, I mean, Sunday Night Football is going to be, I think it'll be a good game, but like not a good fantasy game by any means. Monday night, Colts Jets. That Jets secondary is asking for it right now. I can hear it. I can smell it. Andrew Luck been cleared. I think this is a good Andrew Luck game.
Yeah, so the Andrew Luck, Dante Moncrief, Dwayne Allen stack looks pretty good. T.Y. Hilton's a bit banged up. Darrelle Revis would rather retire than cover anybody, but you got to assume that he'll cover at least most of the game for T.Y. Hilton. So I'm going more Luck, Moncrief, Allen. But I do love a play in this week, and I love him above all running backs throughout. I think I love Matt Forte against the Colts bottom 10 run defense and the last team against bottom 10 against fantasy running backs. So, there's value for Matt Forte if you're playing him in a GPP that includes Monday night or primetime game. Matt Forte is going to be the running back you might want to start with. I think he gets a lot of volume. Not getting volume against the Pats last week, but pass receiving, rushing, it's all going to be good for him. I'm going to fade Brandon Marshall against Vontae Davis. So therefore, if I'm playing another receiver, not on the Colts side of things, it's Quincy Enunwa. He's coming off a good game. I think if you expect the Colts to blow him out, which I think we're kind of both leaning that way in terms of Luck getting healthy here and the Colts showing that they're a playoff caliber team. I think you put Enunwa in there. So Forte and all Week 13 type performer, and then a quiet Colts stack.
Oh, you're getting me thinking on my Yahoo lineups. I think the interesting move there would be Luck Moncrief and then come around with Forte. I think that's a really smooth um, transition there. Yeah, I think this is going to be a fun game. Obviously, Luck spreads it out if Hilton's out. Um, I want to like Philip Dorsett in some of these games where the prominent receiving options are out, but it just doesn't seem like they want to use him that way.
Mhm.
Seems like they have him pretty set in that deep threat crosser, uh, dump it off every once in a while type role. So even if Hilton is out, I'm not sure Dorsett is the guy to benefit. I think it's going to be Luck Moncrief. And as you mentioned, throw a Dwayne Allen in there, Jack Doyle. Those primetime slates, man, the tight end position in primetime slates is just brutal every week. So if you can nail that Luck Moncrief Allen stack, you're looking pretty good, I think.
All right, what do you think about putting some of our money where our mouth is, maybe setting up a lineup and seeing how we do next week?
So we talked about this before the show. We are going to throw in a lineup right now. We're going to go back and forth, picking one player at a time till we have a lineup. And you said you wanted to do FanDuel, correct?
Yeah, because that's where I have more balance. Actually, to be honest with you, I'm not permitted right now to play DraftKings because of last year's FanDuel DraftKings snafu. FanDuel has after they laid me off, they gave me a 6 month window and permitted me in, but DraftKings has still locked me out. So I'm only allowed to play FanDuel. Excuse me. So what do you want to play? You want to play that Sunday Million and just shoot for the sky?
Let's do it.
All right. So we got a Sunday Million lineup coming in. You want to take the quarterback, or you want me to take that and you go with something else?
Well, I mean, if we're gonna go quarterback here on the main slate, uh, even with the ownership, I think I wanna get Drew Brees in there. Is
All
that
right.
cool, or is that not
Easy money,
contrarian
man.
enough?
Drew Brees
All
is,
right.
at home. I don't even care that the Lions can play some defense. He's going to throw his 303, and that's all I really need out of my quarterback position. 25 points. Just don't hurt me, and I'll figure the rest out. So, and then running back, I had a running back that I really liked, and it was Jordan Howard. Matt Forte is not available in the Sunday Million.
Howard 7,400.
Yeah, and I kind of like that against the 49ers defense, which has been awful against the run. So I'm going to throw Jordan Howard in there, and let's see if you can give us a value guy.
Boom. Okay. Oh, we're going value?
Well, no, I mean, I would just think that.
So the top three there, the decision really is to David Johnson or not to David Johnson. And I think we're gonna David Johnson this week.
Yeah.
You go David Johnson here.
We're gonna make a mess of our receiving core. So let's leave the receivers for last. I'm going on defense. I'm gonna go with a little Patriots. Actually, I know their fantasy scores haven't been great, but they are at home. They lost Gronk. They're gonna play a lot more inspired as a team against the Rams. Thinking a little Patriots action. What do you think about that one? Or should I go Broncos? Go premium.
I am gonna screen share right now, so people can see what we're doing here. So, what did you say for defense?
I'm thinking either the Patriots for value at 4,600, or going premium with the Broncos and just hoping they get a 2 touchdown performance against Bortles.
I'm cool with that.
All right, let's do it. It's the Broncos.
Broncos. All right. Kicker. Now let's see if Denny can lead me to victory here. Who was he talking about earlier this week?
Other than Justin Tucker.
Think
smells like
I think he we can go Matt Prater with Breeze, so we get that Detroit exposure. Hopefully it's a fast-paced game there. Prater's had, 8 or more in each of his last 5 matchups. So I think we like that one. Going Matt Prater, 48.
All right, tight end. I think I'm going to go value here, and I'm going to do it with Vernon Davis. I'm hoping, with Jordan Reed out, Vernon Davis gets volume at 4,600.
Yeah, and the weird thing about Vernon Davis is he was getting legitimate usage even with Jordan Reed in the lineup. Arizona's tough against
number one against tight ends.
Yeah,
no
but
touchdowns allowed.
At 46 and with Kirk Cousins there, and that's going to be high volume. I think that's interesting. So kind of going back here, I want to go back to Brandon Cooks again.
Nice.
Just to kind of get that stack in. I think that's kind of basically where I want to go again this week, for better or worse.
So at 12,900 left on the board, we're going to get sucked out of the Mike Evans game. I kind of want to find a way to get Mike Evans in this lineup.
So if we go Mike Evans, we have 4,400. How much do you like Mike Evans compared to David Johnson, I guess, or we could bump down at defense, or we could bump down at quarterback.
I don't want to bump down at quarterback if we're going Breeze, Cooks. So let's get Evans in there and find a receiver we want, and then find a way to afford him.
Okay. Kind of rolling through here. Value-ish players. Tyler Boyd at 54.
What about Andre Hopkins at 6,700?
Ooh. Andre Hopkins. Okay. Or Julian Edelman at 66. I think this range is where I'm really trying to key in. Edelman, Hopkins, Adams, Cooks. I think I really like that range. Obviously, Michael Thomas there at 69. I think that'd be a really good way to differentiate yourself with Hopkins here.
Yeah.
So we'd need to get rid of 2,300. So we'd have to fade Johnson or Breeze.
I'd rather fade Johnson just because I think everyone is going to have him in their lineup. And that leaves us 6,900.
So, my arch nemesis, Todd Gurley, is right there. 68. Carlos Hyde against Chicago. Theo Riddick at 6,500. Tim Hightower, 62. I know people really like that play.
Or how about this? We get Johnson back in there and we go down to Dion Lewis.
Oh, instead of Jordan Howard?
Yeah.
Oh, wow. There you go. With 500 left, or with 100 left.
Oh, I like this. We are both going to be billionaires. That lineup is a winner.
So final lineup here is Breeze, Lewis, David Johnson, Brandon Cooks, Mike Evans, Hopkins, Vernon Davis, Prater, Broncos.
That is your Week 13 answer key.
And I think that's a really nice contrarian way to go with a Drew Brees, Brandon Cooks stack, because obviously that's going to be highly owned. But, if you're looking for a way to be different, I think Hopkins against that Packers secondary, pretty intriguing for sure.
We're going to win FanDuel Sunday Million with that one. And this will be the most famous podcast video ever.
There you go. You heard it here first, folks. As always, you can find Eric's Slate breakdown every week on dailyfantasycafe.com. So go ahead and check that out. If you like what we're doing here on the videos, give us a like and subscribe. And as always, good luck this week, and we hope you win all the money. Thanks for tuning in, and we will see you guys in week 14.